$1 trillion of government debt. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.heise here with my stein of coffee. And I thought we'd have a look at this ABC News article, just discussing fears that our government debt could hit $1 trillion, from Peter Costello himself. So, well, I can't say any of us would be particularly surprised, and I think this will tie into other pieces I want to look at today with the potential of a lost decade. Here's the thing. We could get $1 trillion of debt, and the government will just, or the Reserve Bank will just print the money and lend it to the government one way or another, and then future generations will be forced to pay for it either through taxation, due to paying down the debt, or taxation to regulate and manage the economy. One way or another, it's going to affect future quality of life here. And GDP growth has been below trend since the GFC. We kind of got lucky that time. So let's have a look at the former Treasurer's warning. So former Treasurer Peter Costello says Australian government debt could hit $1 trillion because of the pandemic crisis, and it would be very unlikely to be paid back. I don't think you'd pay back $1 trillion, he told 730. You can't pay back any of it until you turn a budget surplus. That's the first point. And then how many budget surpluses would you need to pay that back? 20? 20 in a row? Can you imagine that? Yeah, there's the question. There's the concern. At the start of the crisis, the federal government had more than $570 billion of debt, more than 5 times what it got to after the GFC, after the global financial crisis. So just at the start, we were already in such a mess. And I know there's arguments put forward that you don't need to pay back this debt. But, sure, you don't need to, but it just means your nation will perpetually be in a situation where future generations will be beholden to this, and there's no possibility to reduce the tax burden on your citizens. It's that simple. So when people coming over here, my children, my children's children, migrants, their children, they'll be suckered in. Come over and hitch your children on to the tax burden. Serfdom for future years to come. The pandemic has plunged the global economy into its most severe recession in 90 years. That is, if we're lucky, according to Ross Greneau, professor of economics at the University of Melbourne, who has spent the past 5 months researching what the virus is doing to the Australian economy. It's triggered a deep recession. If we're lucky, it will simply be the deepest recession since the Great Depression, he told 730. If we're lucky. And, there's a lot of people that are concerned that we're heading into something worse than the Great Depression, and there's potential hits to property market, there's potential hits to unemployment. Unemployment is already sitting at 7.1%. I'll bring it up here. Our cash rate is a joke. And I haven't bothered updating this chart in a while because it's still sitting at 0.25. It'll just have a straight line on the bottom. And yet we still have people that are professional people that are so much in debt to housing that they're dependent on a holiday from the bank. And I know some of you. This example in a previous article is a project manager. Project managers are on good money, everyone. They're usually on 6 figures and above, particularly the age of the lady in the article. You'd think you'd have a reserve, that you're not completely beholden to the bank's good graces to keep you in your home or to avoid a forced sale. Maybe it's just a complete lack of financial literacy. And we've had it so good here in Australia. 29 years without a recession. People don't know any different. Maybe we need to be humbled a bit as a people. We'll learn to tighten our belts. But then that'll have a flow-on effect. It'll make the recession even deeper until we get confident to loosen those belt buckles a bit and spend a little bit more. But then we see other things. We see car sales are higher than normal. People in the comments are also they're adding evidence to the pile. They've got anecdotal evidence saying, yep, no, sales here were up, people coming in, buying new cars, using their super payments. So that tells me people aren't tightening their belt. What do you think in the comments, everyone? Do you think people are preparing or not, or is it a mix? Is it a mix? Do you have a whole bunch of people who are just believing the headlines that everything will be rosy? They think that we'll get that V-shaped recovery, so they're going, oh, now's the time to buy that car, or that. Maybe I'm just too bitter and twisted now, and old and grey. But I'm not in my 50s, as some people have said in the comments. Bloody hell. I think that we'll be remembering the pandemic recession after we've stopped thinking a lot about the pandemic itself. Yes, and he's right there. He's 100% right there. This recession is going to be a changer for a generation. It's a recession that's going to be very difficult for Australia, no matter how well we continue to do with the virus. And we've done well so far because of the massive effect it's having on the global economy and on our major trading partners, the professor said. As Mr. Costello puts it, just as we get the patients out of the ICU, we get the economy into the ICU. That's where it's at the moment. The recession will be sharpened by the fact household economic pressure was already growing and people were already struggling before the pandemic. And he's right. People were already struggling. Some sectors of our economy were definitely in recession. Digital finance analytics data shared exclusively with 730 showed rental stress and owner-occupier mortgage stress has been rising at a fairly steady rate since the GFC. And we can see that just with the RBA increase in arrears. I'm still, I wouldn't say shocked. I'm disappointed that you're getting professionals that are dependent on these bank holidays. It just shows you that financial literacy is it taught at any schools? You know, I've gotten, because I've been talking about economics and finance, my YouTube feed is filling up with all these people that are discussing it all on YouTube, sharing their own experiences, or even like Dave Ramsey have a radio show on it. And I'm watching this stuff going, yeah, we got none of this at school. None of this, and it should be fundamental to having a good stress-free life. I was watching one guy, and he was getting hammered because what he'd done is he'd paid off his mortgage. He paid 320 grand off his mortgage by 36. And people were slamming him in the comments. Oh, you could have made so much more money if you invested. And he goes, yeah, but, I want to have stress-free, that monkey off your back. And I don't think people appreciate, there could be one way you can have more money, but you could live, 20, 30 years without stress. What do you think is going to have a better impact on your quality of life over that entire period and your retirement? Extra money or 30 years of lower stress levels? What do you think is going to have a greater impact on people's need and requirement to medical facilities? I'd say lower stress. The data measured by a cash flow analysis of 52,000 people shows that 35.6% of rental households were experiencing rental stress in December 2019, more than double December 2000 when it was at 16.3%. Just look at that. In 20 years. And we can see property prices, even just from 2006. Look at that growth. Owner-occupier households experiencing mortgage stress were at 32.7% in December 2019, while in 2000 it was at 11.7%. So it nearly tripled. Nearly tripled, everyone. Australia's the lucky country, eh? Marnie Baker, Managing Director of Bendigo and Adelaide Bank, said out of her 1.86 million customers, about 20,000 mortgage and business customers were deferring their loan repayments. Well, that doesn't sound too bad. I think from an industry perspective, around 220 billion worth of loans are currently having their interest payments deferred and principal payments deferred, she said. Nobody has experienced anything like this. And yes, well, nobody has. This is a new recession. Ordinary Australians are feeling the pinch like never before. Melbourne's iconic Queen Victoria Market is a microcosm of the big economy recovery problem. For instance, for industries that rely on the gathering of people and tourism in particular, the recovery is going to be slow and tough. The market was there for the first depression in 1891, as well as the second one in 1930s, the Spanish flu, 2 world wars, and a GFC. But it has never seen the likes of this. Oh, we've got no living memory of any of these examples, except the GFC. We've been trading here continuously for 70 years. Nobody has experienced anything like this before, Belinda Doneghy from the American Donut Kitchen said. We've seen a steep decline in our revenue, Wendy Voon of Wendy Voon Knit said. We've seen pretty good foot traffic become non-existent. And it's only going to get worse in Victoria. Fruit seller Ross and Saldo said 2020 has been a very challenging year. Between the fires, floods and droughts, it's been the toughest year and I can't wait for it to finish. Be careful what you wish for, mate. 2021 could be worse. We could be deeply in recession, man. Just think what happens when all these support mechanisms get removed, even if partially. Fishmonger George Melanis said while his revenue dropped by about 50%, or when his revenue dropped by about 50%, it was panic stations. It was about 2 weeks of absolute panic. It really was, he said. We all are extremely worried. We're getting a lot of support in the back end at Queen Victoria Market. I'm not sure that's happening everywhere else. Mr. Milanus is worried about what will happen come September when many financial measures are slated to end. And I've said I suspect some people will be taking advantage of the mortgage holiday and all these payments to stash money aside, and then we won't, it'll be a delayed period till we see the impacts of this. But maybe I'm expecting too much. Maybe people are just really that close to the wire with regards to their payments that they're going to take a hit. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that are doing fine. But remember, particularly for property, it's the edge cases. It's the last sale in the street. It's the last sale in the suburb that affects the valuation of your property. And some businesses may not survive. Well, that's really what a recession is. Many are concerned that schemes like JobKeeper and Seeker, bank loan deferrals and rent relief, all assume the downturn will end in September. We cannot afford, once we get through to September, to have measures conclude. Greg Combet, Industry Super Australia Chair and Measure of the Australian Government's National Pandemic Coordination Commission said. Having said that, I think we've also got to shift from the focus on income support to promotion of productive investment in the economy. I mean, you've got to be brave to be investing now. Some businesses will simply not survive, Mr. Costello said. Yes, this is a recession. This is a recession that's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for a lot of people. They're not going to survive the ACU. They're never coming back. And that means our economy will be weaker longer. The real cure for the economic woes is a vaccine, and no one knows how far off this is, if one will be found at all. Will that really cure it? How many people will close to the line? I think it will be hard for us to go back to the pre-pandemic normal without a vaccine, the Deputy Chief Medical Officer, Professor Paul Kelly, said. It's a balance between the economy and the virus that's something we need to live with for a period. I think we're going to see the impact of this recession for some time, regardless of whatever's developed. Sure, it'll be a spike in confidence, but if people are struggling now, we'll have to see. The businesses are still going to be hit, regardless of what's happened. The damage has been done. The damage has been done. It's just been offset because of all of these interventions. What do you think, everyone? Do you think we'll hit $1 trillion debt? Do you think it'll ever be paid off? Or do you think maybe there'll be pushes for debt jubilees or a harder shift to socialistic policies? Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below, everyone. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and want to support the content I create here, there are a few ways you can. You can join us on YouTube or Patreon. You can support us via our affiliate links at Amazon or eBay or Independent Reserve and Kucoin. Buy our merch from HeiseSays, use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next video.